and welcome to Branch of Israel. This is Rabbi Roger coming to you from God's beautiful country, Israel. The other night, my wife and I were watching a movie of a true story that took place in the early 1900s, around the time of World War I. Though I was not familiar with the content, it was still very moving in how one of today's hymns came about. Many have written books and songs about the love of God and have done very well at it. For some of you listening to me, you might be familiar with an old hymn called Love of God. Yet, out of the 100% of you who know the hymn, I would be willing to say that probably less than 1% are familiar with the derivation of the words in the third stanza. Frederick M. Lehman was forced to take a job at a packing plant because of a business loss. While there, he had written 2 stanzas to a hymn about the love of God. Unfortunately, he was unable to come up with a third stanza. In those days, a song had to have 3 stanzas. In the movie, it was mentioned 3 represented the Trinity, and the song was incomplete without a third line. According to Al Smith's Treasury of Hymn Histories, someone had given Lehman a card that he used as a bookmark, and the following words were inscribed upon it. Could we with ink the ocean fill, and were the skies of parchment made, were every stalk on an earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. At the bottom of the card, it told the story of how these words were found written on a cell wall in a prison some 200 years before. It was not known why the prisoner was incarcerated nor the origin of the words. In due time, he died, and the men who had the job of repainting his cell were impressed by the words. Before their paintbrushes had obliterated them, one of the men jotted them down, and thus they were preserved. These words fit his last line of the hymn perfectly, and it was published in 1917. Yet, it still does not answer where did this man learn to write something so spectacular. Well, let me take you back in time to the 11th century to meet a man called Rabbi Meir ben Isaac Nehoria, who was a cantor in Worms, Germany. He had written a poem that is 90 verses long, and the first 44 verses were written as an acrostic. Acrostics are found in the Bible like in Psalm 119, where each line begins with the Hebrew letter of the alphabet. And considering there's 22 letters, he just doubled them up like A, B, B, C, C, and so forth. The poem was eventually instituted and read on the first day of the Feast of Weeks in Ashkenazi synagogues around the world. By the way, it was years later after the hymn was published that Alfred B. Smith would bring to light the reality of the mystery behind the third stanza. Yet, even more so amazing was how the words just seemed to fit perfectly. Sounds like something only God could do. You can find this full teaching and others on our website by visiting branchofisrael.com. Again, this is Rabbi Roger coming to you from Israel, and thank you so much for listening. Lehitraot, goodbye, or see you again.